We are coming to you live from Jerusalem in Israel. It's an NDTV World exclusive. Just 2 days after the Israeli and the American joint strikes inside of Iran, where Khamenei was in fact neutralized. The supreme leader is no more amongst us in Iran. There are more than 40 commanders of the IRGC who have been eliminated as well. The airstrikes continue even as I speak. While I was coming inside the foreign ministry of Israel, there were missiles that were thrown inside Jerusalem that were neutralized by the Israeli defense mechanism. But here on a World Exclusive, joining us live for the first time after the conflict broke out in the last 2 days is Gideon Saar, the foreign minister of Israel. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening.
It's a very critical time, but the first question that comes to the mind of each and every person here who's been observing is that what was the need to get into a conflict or a war at a time when negotiations were underway? We saw talks in Geneva take place, and there was a commitment made that technical negotiations and agreements will in fact take place in Vienna, Austria. But what was the urgency to go in and eliminate Khamenei?
But those who conduct the negotiations, the Americans themselves, came into conclusion that Iran, as usual, is wasting time, not meeting the American red lines with regard to the nuclear program, Iranian nuclear program, not meeting the American red lines with regard to the ballistic missiles program. So altogether, we knew that within a very short time, Iran is going to put all its nuclear program in a very deep underground installation where not Israel and not America can hit effectively from the air. They plan to do the same thing with ballistic missiles production. So that would put them in, I would say, immunity place, and they can do whatever they want to do. You can see only from the last days how much this regime is dangerous. They are hitting not only us, our civilian population, but also Arab countries in the region without any provocation. So this is an extremely dangerous regime for their own people, as we saw in the way they butchered their own people during the last protest, to all countries in the region. And of course, for us, it's an existential threat. And therefore, since we thought time is of essence from the reasons I just mentioned, and also time is of essence taking into consideration the expectations of the Iranian people that fought bravely for the freedom, but reasonably cannot achieve it without any help from outside.
Minister,
So this is why we decided with our American friends that we must act. There are, of course, complications that might happen, but it's more dangerous not to act rather than to act in this situation.
fair enough. I'll come to what is happening now and what's been happening over the last 3 days. But first, you had Oman acting as a mediator between US and Iran. There were talks that were happening. The Oman foreign minister was on record to say that perhaps in the next 90 days, there was some kind of an outcome that could happen on a peace agreement. There were technical details that could be discussed. And now the foreign minister of Oman said that he's dismayed. He's thinking that there was a talks process underway. There was a step-by-step process that could have led to perhaps some kind of an agreement. But now Oman says that, whatever commitment was there has been violated. How do you respond to that?
I don't think I have to respond to that because we were not a side or a part to the negotiations. The Americans handled it. And it is true that, as always, President Trump preferred to reach an agreed solution to this thing. But as it happened on June, he found out eventually that they can waste time forever, but they will not reach to a good agreement. And the bad agreement is something that Americans didn't want to achieve. So this is why they concluded, like we did, it's time to act. And I think their judgment is good. But you should ask yourself a different question about Oman. Why Iran attacked also Oman? And this demonstrates how much you cannot trust this regime.
But Minister Saar, while we are discussing Oman and a lot of other countries that have come under attack, I'll come to that. But the US president has now gone on record and said that the Iranian new governing council has shown interest in a dialogue process or negotiation. And he says he's ready to come on the dialogue table. Is Israel willing to also come on the dialogue table?
I heard quite good President Trump only yesterday. I think he demonstrated he's decisive to act. We need here a change, a real change. They could have reached to this change with just divorced from all their strategies with regard to terror proxies, nuclear ambitions, and ballistic missiles plan. They decided, as much as they did last June, not to do it. And therefore, from our point of view, we need to remove existential threats aimed on Israel because they swore and they acted in order to eliminate the state of Israel. So we need to remove these threats not only for weeks or months. We need to remove them from for the long term. And it is not reasonable to assume we will be able to do that with the current fanatic Ayatollah regime in Iran. And this is why we decided to act, and we will intensify our strikes on the Iranian regime in order to give the Iranian people the opportunity to get their freedom back. Of course, eventually it will be up to them if it will happen or not. But from our part, we will do our utmost to create the conditions that this will be possible.
But how would a regime change really be possible? That's the big question right now, because there's no substitute leader down on ground. There is, of course, Reza Pahlavi, who is not, of course, down on ground. He might have or might not have ground support. There we did see hundreds and thousands of protesters over the last many weeks, but there's no leader. Is Israel and US going to leave Iran in a complete chaos, in a vacuum, or do you think that there will be a civilian leader who could take over?
Not Israel and not the US will decide who will lead the Iranian people. I think it is for the Iranian people to choose within a fair, free elections process. But the fair and free election process will not happen when this regime is still powerful. So we need to weaken them to an extent that a transmission is possible. And this is what we aim to do.
All right. But the question also is about the crisis that is unfolding. Now, the entire Middle East has been engulfed into it. There are several countries. UAE has had casualties. Dubai International Airport was hit. Doha similarly. We've got similar reports from Bahrain, Kuwait, and many other countries. How long is this going to continue?
Why Iran is attacking airports in Qatar or in the Emirates? Is it reasonable? Did they had a conflict with the Emirates or Qatar? It demonstrates you the madness of this regime. So the question is, after 5 decades that this regime caused instability in the Middle East, spread terrorism, spread fanatism around the Middle East and beyond, is it logical to continue to give them the free hand to do so? This is the question. This is the real question.
But US President Donald Trump, again, who ordered this Operation Epic Fury, says that the timeline looks like 4 weeks at least. Would you put a timeline to it, or you would say that until the regime change happens, you will continue the military operations?
No, I think that also the president, but I'm not speaking on his behalf, gave maybe an assessment, but not a commitment to a certain timeline. We look at the objectives and we will, of course, coordinate things with our American allies.
Could you also share a little details? This is the first world exclusive that is happening. You're speaking out very frankly. I'm glad. But you hit Khamenei. How long was Israel tracking Khamenei? And any details? There are media reports that have happened in the US side saying that Mossad and CIA were looking at Khamenei for weeks together, on ground, technical intelligence and human intelligence. But how long were you tracking him? What were the activities that he was involved in?
Well, he was involved directly on terrorism. By the way, Argentina just said he was the one that gave the orders to the terror actions in Buenos Aires during the 90s, for example. So he was personally responsible for terrorism worldwide, but he was also responsible for another thing, and is butchering the Iranian people, thousands and thousands of Iranians that went to the street to protest just a few weeks ago on January. So I would say, the head of a murderous regime. And from the minute we started to plan this operation with the objectives we put, we, of course, did whatever is necessary from the point of view of our intelligence to make it successful. And I want to give you another thing which I think is important. In the same time that we attacked what people call the supreme leader, we also attacked the consultations of the Revolutionary Guard and security apparatus of Iran. And there they dealt, at the same time we attacked them, a little bit after 9 a.m. Iran time on Saturday. They dealt with how to further repress the Iranian people, because they just lately protested again in the universities and so on. So you must understand, it's a regime that oppresses its own people with such a vicious way. What can you expect from his behavior towards other countries in the region? Probably nothing. So I think that in the minute when they decided, after our attacks on last June, that they won't change their strategy. And what was their strategy? The elimination of Israel. And the means are terror proxies, nuclear ambitions, and long-range ballistic missiles in huge numbers. From the minute we saw they had no tendency to change their doctrine, we thought it is inevitable that we should act again in order to achieve a long-term results in our efforts.
Minister, lastly, what is your analysis about the kind of neutralization that has happened? We know that the supreme leader is no more. We know that the top brass is no more. As of now, how do you analyze the Iranian regime? Do you think they are in control, and how many of them have been eliminated as per your intelligence analysis?
There are a few dozens that we know from the heads of this regime that were eliminated, but they are still in control in Iran. They are deploying in the cities of Iran to try to prevent any kind of public protest. And I think they are still in control. And I think that they will do their utmost by all means to do that. But I think that during our operation, and I think we have a good plan, they will reach to a situation, they will be dramatically weakened. And that will be the time for the Iranian people to speak.
And lastly, and final question to you, and this is a little, heading out of this scenario about Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who was here just last week. I came with him for this entire visit and couldn't fly back. But the question really is that the Prime Minister met Benjamin Netanyahu, your Prime Minister. You had a special strategic partnership that has been announced. And now, last night, both the Prime Ministers have spoken as well, and India has expressed concern. But India has also condemned terrorism when it comes to Israel or India. How do you see India and Israel relationship right now? And in the backdrop of this regional crisis, what would be your message to India and perhaps the larger world?
We had a great visit of Prime Minister Modi. You could have seen the appreciation of our Knesset, of the government, of the people of Israel, to India, the love to India and to its leader. And I believe that India has a very strong partner for its future. And I believe India has a bright future as the biggest democracy on earth and the faster growing economy on earth. And India can rely on Israel's friendship as I believe we can rely on India's friendship.
All right, Minister Gideon Saar, thank you very much for joining for this world exclusive here on NDTV.
You're welcome.